It's been since January 4th of 2025 since we have last seen the Cleveland Browns in regular season action. We've been patient for the most part, but much like a child at some point, you've got to kick something out of the nest and see if they can fly. Well, we're less than 48 hours away now from kicking the 2025 Cleveland Browns out of the nest and seeing if they can fly. Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network begins now. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. We appreciate all the support we get here at the OBR, whether it is going to the OBR.com every day for your favorite Cleveland Browns written content from our fantastic group of writers. While you are there, I've been preaching it. I hope you've been taking advantage. The VIP access, the insider forums, the Ask the Insiders, and of course, your subscription is bundled with Paramount Plus. And if you are a UFC fan, you know what that subscription means. Essentially, you're getting a BOGO deal. The support here for the OBR streaming network, I came on obviously a little bit after the 2025 regular season ended. We have pretty much doubled our subscribers on YouTube. We could not be more appreciative for all the support we get here. So make sure you are subscribed to the OBR on YouTube. And of course, make sure you subscribe to the OBR on Twitch. Again, it's been a while since we've gotten to see the boys in action. And I've told you guys that my excitement level picks up. It's just for football in general. Do I get back on my BS and try to think that this team can maybe be competitive? I'm not going to lie. I probably do psych myself into that a little bit. But I think also part of the excitement is, having this week one matchup with the Cincinnati Bengals. The Browns match up well with the Cincinnati Bengals. And that is one thing that's pretty much been constant throughout the Kevin Stefanski regime. They play this team well, even though this team has legitimate firepower on the offensive side of the ball. There's no mistaking that with the Cincinnati Bengals. But they do have some offensive line issues, which the Cleveland Browns defensive line has certainly been able to take, advantage of over the years. One of the top 3 wide receivers in the entire NFL. And it certainly helps that he plays with one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the NFL. It certainly helps that the relationship between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase goes back to LSU in what was a dominant, crazy dominant season that led to LSU winning the national championship. So much so that Jamar Chase just punted on his final year of eligibility at LSU and still was a top 5 selection. It's a fun matchup for Browns fans, for their team because, 2021, of course, Cincinnati going to the Super Bowl. And, for Browns fans, it was like, we can play with those guys any day. And it just kind of tells you that, it's weird the way the league works is because you can match up with a certain team who can be a highly successful team. And still your team can at times look better than them. And, that's kind of been the case for the Browns, certainly throughout the Stefanski regime, with a lot of, moving parts, as certainly as far as the, quarterback position is concerned, certainly wide receivers and, the running game and, it's been Miles and others and, Denzel Ward has certainly been a drastic part of this successful run against this franchise. But when you look at this Bengals team and, as much as it kills me to speak real about this franchise, and we will. Also, I love this hat. I don't know why. Do I like the elf necessarily? No. The fact that the elf is gone from the 50-yard line, I hate the elf. And I understand, where it's part in history, but and I've learned it over the years, and so many of you Browns fans have been educational in helping me learn. I got to be honest, guys. Unless you were a truly diehard Cleveland Brown fan, everybody on the outside looking in was like, "What the hell is the elf doing as your midfield logo?" The helmet is what is synonymous with the Cleveland Browns franchise. The simplicity of it. That is your midfield logo. It should always be your midfield logo. Rocking the brown jerseys and the orange pants on Sunday. Outside of the all brown throwback, my favorite combo, of course. But back to the Bengals. You can't deny what Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins are together. When the Bengals, and again, as much as I can't stand them, when you get the opportunity to see them play against other teams, you can appreciate just what Joe and T and Jamar can do together. They are a solid group. They get things done. Large amount of yards, large amount of points, of course. You mix in a Mike Gesicki and now even a Noah Fant, who has certainly kind of been a little bit of a thorn in the side for the Cleveland Browns at times. The potential of the Cincinnati Bengals passing game is just, it's insane what they can do. And, this offense can throw for 4,500 yards and it looks relatively easy. And, certainly a lot of that has to do with the fact that, the relationship with Burrow and Chase is, I mean, it's to the point where both guys could probably play blindfolded. And it's rare that you get that within the league. And, certainly it was fortunate the way it worked out for the Bengals. You got Burrow at one as a rookie. Then all of a sudden, Joe took the world on fire, got injured, missed a good part of the season. The team wasn't winning, obviously. You ended up with an extremely high selection the next year. And of course, you went and got, what was his best college target in Jamar Chase. And of course, that was keeping in mind you drafted T. Higgins the second round after you drafted Joe Burrow in the first. Running back Chase Brown was a guy I loved out of Illinois, and his brother, just, great players. Sydney played last night for the Eagles. Strange game, obviously, by the way. I think that lightning delay just took any juice there was in that game right out of it. Chase Brown is what makes Chase Brown interesting here. And I think it's because he gives you a lot of what Joe Mixon did, and which probably made the move for the Bengals that much easier to move on from a Bengal stalwart guy that was Joe Mixon. Because you want that all around back. You want that guy who can kind of just be just as dangerous within the receiving game as he certainly can be, just running the ball. I think Chase Brown probably hasn't shown the ability running the ball yet, maybe, where, you're going to say, to the level of Joe Mixon, but I think he's there as a receiver. And, his big play ability as a receiver is certainly, something that is really, makes Brown successful, of course. The offensive line is kind of where the issues come from. And it's kind of been the case. And, Joe gets beat, gets rocked. It happens, certainly, that, with what the Bengals have invested in Joe and Chase and Higgins and, certainly, now in Hendrickson at the defensive end position, that is a large amount of money. And certainly for a team like the Bengals that don't operate at the financial costs that other franchises do, there's going to be issues, of course. And you are going to be lacking. And it's not that they don't have money invested into it or premium stock invested into it. They paid good money for Orlando Brown. Ted Karras is certainly a center that makes a decent amount of money. Amarius Mims was a first-round selection. Late move of bringing in Dalton Reisner, who, if you look at the Bengals and look at their depth charts, is not maybe listed as a starter, but I have a hard time believing that Dalton Reisner is probably not their starter on Sunday. He's been there enough where I think the talent of Dalton Reisner should be better, certainly than Lucas Patrick. And then the thing would be is, why would you have brought in a guy of Dalton, Reisner's resume if he's not going to start? Because you don't think Reisner just picked the Cincinnati Bengals to just come and, hang out on the bench for the Cincinnati Bengals. So, but, Orlando Brown Jr., just the issue is sometimes that his size. It's just the more athletic guys tend to have their way. And when you were talking about Myles Garrett, who is the freak of freaks, it's just not a very good matchup for Orlando Brown Jr. Not that there is a left tackle that is really a good matchup against Myles Garrett. And Myles has eaten against this offensive line for years. You go back to the 2023 opener and you remember the double crossover while standing over the center and, just looking at the interior line and the Bengals look up and I'm like, what in the world is this guy about to do? And, the things that we kind of take as Browns fans in watching Myles Garrett that, to us just appear sometimes almost ordinary because he's Myles Garrett and we've just seen the amount of insane athleticism translating to pass rush and sacks. For a team like the Bengals who, basically have played him 1,000 times, it always seems that Myles Garrett kind of breaks out something against the Bengals that we have never seen before. I forget what year it was. Maybe it was 20. Maybe it was the COVID year. It was the twist, and it was he and Porter Gustin, and Myles went on the inside, Gustin went on the outside. Myles crushed Burrow. Gustin recovered a fumble. It was probably like the 3 or the 2 at the time. I'm definitely dating myself by throwing out a Porter Gustin reference. And you take advantage of that. Amarius Mims, it's kind of another type of guy where he's, essentially this freak god with all that insane athleticism as a size, has it not translated yet. And I don't want to like be harsh on him because he's only a second-year player and a second-year starter. But, you probably think there's a world where Mims, for if you're Cincinnati, is going to take off. But against the Myles Garretts of the world, which there are maybe 2, 3, and that's it. These guys who are quality players or a guy who's got all the ability in the world that looks like he could transition into a quality player look like mortal men. And it's staggering to watch at times if you are a Browns fan because you just see the relative ease that these things happen. And you understand that these guys were first round picks, high picks, make a boatload of money. And, they look just like any other guy when they go against the Myles Garretts of the world. And now that you factor in that the Browns are, 5 deep at the defensive end position, all of these guys with pass rushing ability, all 5 of the defensive tackles who will play on Sunday, Mike Hall, not ready yet. He will not be one of those guys. All have pass rush ability. And to just be able to run in and out, and maybe the Browns only dress 9 of these defensive linemen on Sunday. But to have that type of ability where you could just be running them in, running them off, and keeping everybody fresh when it's an offensive line, and I don't want to say they're shaky. That's probably giving a little disservice to the Bengals offensive line. They're middle of the road, but when you can just keep gunning these guys out there and keeping everybody fresh, and as much as the Bengals like to throw the ball, which they should, when you have Joe and you have Chase and Higgins and the Princeton kid And, the guy who was, a world beater in the summer in Tinsley, and even little Charlie Jones has been feisty, as a far as a return guy and a slot guy for Cincinnati. The Browns can just come at you all day long with their pass rush, and they can just keep bringing guys in and out. It just makes for an impossible day. But the thing that it is with, the Bengals is they don't need much. They don't need to put together a 10, 11 play drive to put points on the board. One Jamar big play, and, all of a sudden, you're inside the opponent's 30, if not closer. So that is one of the biggest things you have to take away. And the Browns have been pretty good in regards to this against Jamar Chase. It's never really been the, 11 receptions for 260 that you've seen Jamar Chase hang on people. Certainly part of that is Denzel Ward. These guys always put on a great matchup. Chase definitely wants his A game against Denzel Ward. Denzel Ward foaming at the mouth at the opportunity to cover Jamar Chase. Knows the skill set, knows where he's regarded within the league. And it's always for, Denzel, and especially within division, this is my time to shine. So the Browns defense can have some great moments Sunday, some fantastic moments Sunday. And sometimes against the Cincinnati Bengals, it's still not enough. You can have the best of them for a good amount of time, but it can still not be enough against the Cincinnati Bengals, which is just crazy to think. I mean, you can have the better part of the Cincinnati Bengals offense for 3 quarters. But in that 15 to 20 minutes where they're cooking, they can drop 30 on you in a heartbeat. And they can certainly do it with the wide receiver position. They can do it with the tight end position. Certainly can do it with the running back position. Samjay Perine, certainly a thorn in everybody's side as far as a receiver. Still looking forward to it as the Browns are breaking in youth, of course, and Mason Graham and Carson Schlesinger. Certainly looking forward to this Browns defense against the Bengals offense on Sunday. Now, for the Browns offense, this is kind of what's really interesting, in my opinion, with the way preseason is now, as opposed to the way it used to be in the older model, is you basically go into 2 weeks of preparation for week 1. So the expectation certainly should be high on both sides of the ball. You always get those, oh, well, it's week 1. A lot of these guys don't play so much in the preseason, and it's understandable, sure. But now when you have those 2 weeks where it's nothing but just focusing on one team, one opponent, as opposed to a normal week of, Monday, we're still going over what went on over the weekend in the last game. Tuesday, nobody's in the building. And now Wednesday, we're picking it back up, gearing up for a game on Sunday against, whoever we're playing this week. This is, 10 practices devoted to putting your best foot forward against the Cincinnati Bengals. And the defense, of course, with Trey Hendrickson back in the fold, and there's no reason to believe that Trey Hendrickson is not going to be full go. I mean, maybe his snap count could be a couple down from what would maybe be his, regular season average from last year. You're still talking about a guy who had over 30 sacks over the last 2 seasons and not making, any claims about where the Browns offensive line is, but you've got them. You've got your starting. You've got your best 5. Dewan, Joel, Hosick, Teller, and of course, Jack Conklin. So the expectation should be high for the offensive line. Dewan Jones against Trey Hendrickson, whatever matchups And, those two line up against each other is certainly something, you're going to have to keep your eye on. And, tight end chipping, running back chipping, certainly something, I don't think the Browns are of the thought at this point where they're just going to let DeJuan Jones take Trey Hendrickson one-on-one. Maybe they'll give him some reps on the left side. Who knows? I don't think it's a wise way to go about it. DeJuan's majority of his time has always been on the right side, and certainly we've seen him excel on the right side. But this is Trey Hendrickson, and of course, Trey Hendrickson can destroy your game, of course. The bigger, more important thing for me as far as the Browns' offensive line certainly is going to be how does it help the running game? And, I talked about this, throughout the summer. It's the one thing that's extremely important to this team and its offensive identity and its offensive success is the running game. And we don't really have much to go on whatsoever. You know, there was a little bit they all played together between the running backs Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson and the offensive line in the final preseason game, of course, against the Rams. But of course, the Rams were playing, substitute teachers, high school football coaches, and insurance salesmen. And there wasn't a lot of work that was done between Jerome Ford, Dylan Sampson, and the offensive line. So something that is so essential for the balance of the Browns offense, the success of the Browns offense, the longevity of time of clock and time of possession, which just allows for the Browns offense to be even more rested and dangerous. That is absolutely, probably for me, is, in regards to the Browns offense, the number one storyline, the number one focus of your eyes on Sunday is, can the Browns run the ball at their 4.5 yard, if not more, per clip that we've grown accustomed to seeing when the Browns offense plays at its peak potential. And it's going to be Jerome, and it is certainly going to be Dylan Sampson. We'll see if the kid, just fresh here, 2 weeks now, gets the opportunity. We know it's not going to be Dylan. I mean, we know it's not going to be Quinshon Judkins, of course. But it's just vital. And when the Cleveland Browns offense is good, or the Cleveland Browns offense is real good, it's because they can run the ball and they have balance, and there's just no way the defense can key one way or the other. I'm excited for where I think Joe Flacco can be this weekend. I think, and you have to be if you're Joe Flacco. Age 30, of course. I'm sorry, 40. Understanding there's not many more opportunities. And, you have to, if you're Joe Flacco, be looking at this and saying, hey, there may be opportunities to start if Joe wants to continue playing after the 2025 season. There's not going to be an opportunity for Joe to be the man, the guy. This is it. We all know the Browns, are probably not going to have much intention anyway whatsoever of making Joe Flacco their starting quarterback next year, regardless of how well he plays. So Joe can kind of just let it all hang out, let it all go. Now, we certainly know, and we've had solid concrete evidence of the David Njoku working relationship from 2023. And you can certainly see that these guys still have each other and kind of appreciate each other just as human beings. And certainly a lot of that has to do with the success they had together in 2023. A lot of it has to do that they are basically both from the same area of South Jersey. So they kind of understand each other, similar interests, can talk about, things that both of them understand. Certainly the question And, I don't think it's that big of a deal, certainly. But, in 2023, when Joe was on that magical run, it was Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is recently retired. And, my joke was that when Amari Cooper told the Raiders he was retiring, well, it looked like Amari Cooper retired in September of 2024, but just still continued to show up at work and cash checks. But thank you for obviously 22 and 23, Amari Cooper. So certainly how Jerry Jeudy and Joe go together is huge. It is absolutely huge because, I think Jerry Jeudy did a tremendous job last season in changing the narrative, the way people believe about him, and finally reached the potential and, got the opportunity to be the guy that he thinks he is. And he certainly proved it to the league, proved it to the Denver Broncos, and certainly proved it to the Cleveland Browns and rewarded them for the faith that they had in him by bringing him in here and basically saying, we think you're the guy, so much so here's a contract extension that we're not willing to give to Amari Cooper. And once you saw a couple of glimpses of Jeudy succeeding, that was enough for the Browns to say, let's get Amari Cooper the heck out of here. You look at the secondary, certainly, DJ Turner, Jordan Battle, Geno Stone, still got a nose for the ball this day and age. Cam Taylor-Britt's always been a pain in the butt. He's always played really well against his franchise. And Dax Hill, I think the problem with a guy like Dax Hill, and once he's done with the Bengals and he does go on to another franchise, I think there's going to be better play from Dax Hill because I think Dax Hill is not necessarily a cornerback and he's not necessarily a safety. And I don't know if there's been anybody who's been creative enough with a strong enough defensive mind to tap into that versatility of Dax Hill and understand that maybe he is just not pigeonholed into one of these positions or the other, and kind of getting creative and kind of making a position where you can use Dax Hill in the strength that you believe he has. New Bengals defense coordinator Al Golden is that guy. I've known Al Golden almost my entire life. Same hometown. Al's older than me. All the kids my age. We wanted to be Al Golden. Same high school that Al Golden went to. We all wanted to be Al Golden. We wanted to go to Red Bank Catholic High School, and we wanted to hope that after high school we could go play at Penn State. There is not a greater man on this planet. Not a greater football guy, in my opinion, than Al Golden. Great, great dude. Not sure they have enough for Al to work with here with the Cincinnati Bengals. Going to keep your eyes on rookie linebacker Demetrius Knight. Can, he and Logan Wilson, and I think Logan Wilson's play has probably fallen off a little bit. He was a guy I had mentioned the year the Browns drafted Jacob Phillips. I really like Jacob Phillips. Good player. Always hurt, but when he actually played, he was good. And of course, a guy like Logan Wilson went to Cincinnati at the time. Now, basically, though, leader of that defense, signal caller. But I think the bloom is probably a little bit off the rose for Logan Wilson. He'll certainly be a guy to monitor on Sunday as far as, can the Browns be successful running the ball? And if they can, it's because guys like Logan Wilson aren't making plays. We'll see, of course, Joseph Osai has always kind of been a fun player for the Bengals. Not a great player, but, a decent situational pass rusher. Is he truly the starter? Or is, rookie first round pick Shamar Stewart the dude? I think Osai will play just because, he's got a track record to, be a guy who stays on the field. But if Shamar Stewart plays, you're gonna see a guy with a crazy amount of athleticism. The problem is it never really resulted in any big amount of production at Texas A&M. I think we're all going to walk out of Sunday holding the heads high because I think the Browns are going to beat the Cincinnati Bengals. I think the Browns probably win maybe a little less than a touchdown. It'll be close late because that's just what Joe Burrow does, and he'll rally late. It'll take a big play by the Browns, sack, batted away pass, maybe a Denzel Ward interception to be the ultimate difference. Then comes the trip to Baltimore, and, we'll talk all about that after this weekend goes through. I'm excited. I hope you're all excited. I know you're all excited. Cleveland Browns football 2025 season. Let's kick them out of the nest and see if they can fly. We appreciate all of you for the support here for the OBR, whether it's the written content of the OBR.com. Definitely get yourself that VIP package. Or, of course, the OBR streaming network doubled its subscriber base since January and going to continue to do so here over the next few months. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR on Twitch. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network. And we will talk to you all Sunday.